be, I've sorted that one. I will be in also on Facebook. So thank you so much for all of you who have come on time. Today's discussion is about the student history of the period between 2000 and the 2003, rather in 2010. The participants today, we are anticipating that we should be having Mr. Tipo Shabalala, who he was a student activist in the early 2000s. And then we should be able to have Mr. Mangoba Mabuza, who was a student leader almost at the tail end of the decade. And then we're going to have, of course, Moses Masilela, who I am made to believe is struggling with network problems. So as soon as he is sorted, we should be able to get him and start right away. But by way of a brief introduction, Mangoba Mabuza is a human rights activist, as you may know, also a very keen football lover, and Baba Noswado's PRO, and also a public relations practitioner, as he would say. He's also an author of a book called The Lane. I hope he will correct me in case I have just pronounced the name of the book wrongly. And then we have also Moses, who is an attorney. He was a former unionist and he was still working for the Government Revenue Collection Unit, and also a human rights activist in his own right. While I struggle with muting all of you, can you help me at least? Okay, now I found a way of muting. Can you kindly ensure that you mute immediately so that we don't have to struggle with backgrounds of people talking? So yeah, that was it. And so I will shortly ask Mangoba just to make some preliminary remarks. I mean, it will also be an opportunity for us to wait for the two of our speakers if they are struggling with challenges of a network or whatever other challenges. So, Mr. Mabuza, welcome to the discussion. Thank you very much for coming. Just some few introductions before we start.
No, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Numalo, and for the opportunity. It's quite a privilege. You know, we are on lockdown, in some sort of lockdown, so we never get to discuss issues physically. But thank you for the platform. Just want to say thank you so much for this opportunity, especially also congratulations on the eSwatini Institute of Alternative Ideas. The work that you are doing is incredible, and it is indeed providing us with a platform to discuss alternative ideas in a country where there's space to discuss, especially political issues. It's very, very limited. When we get such forums, I think it's also an important opportunity to get to discuss politics as well. So being here in a platform where we are discussing the history of the student movement in the country, for me, it's also a platform to discuss a subject matter that is closer to my heart, which is politics. So because you cannot divorce the struggles of the students in the country from the bigger political question, the national question. And thank you to the participants that are here. I'm sure it's going to be engaging. I know some will have questions at the end or during the discussions. And yeah, it's about engaging. I will actually be guided by you. I've got a lot to say. I can start talking about the history as it relates to my time in the student movement, or I can be guided by you in terms of questions. Otherwise, I can go on and on and on and on. The moment you say I must start, brace yourself for something that will not end.
Yeah, no, don't worry. I will guide you. I will have to guide you with regards to who, or rather, how to engage in this case. But yeah, we have Tipo coming in now, so we should be able to start in earnest. The nature, for those who are joining our discussion for the first time today, the nature of our engagement is such that we allow people at the end of the, almost at the end of our discussion, to have opinions. They can engage. They can say one or two things, they can have comments, they can ask questions. So if anyone has a question that they would like to say, and if they note something, they have an opportunity to ask those questions in the discussion, number one. Number two, we also allow people to post their questions on the discussion forum, so they can be able to have their questions answered, and we can pick them up from there. So that is also another option that is open to people who want to engage. But we want to welcome Tipo Shabalala, Mr. Shabalala. Thank you so much for joining. I will try to unmute you now, because you are very, can you kindly unmute? I've asked you to unmute, and I will also try to see if I can unmute. Oh, I think now you should be able to now. We have already done some introductions, Mr. Shabalala, so I was just not to do the first part, but you can just do some introductions, a preliminary introduction about yourself, and then we will immediately start engaging. And in this case, we think that because you were very early in the decade, so you could be the one person that we start to talk to quite easy in this discussion. So you can just introduce yourself and just greet people if that's how you would want to.
Hi, Mangoba, and to the audience, Sanbonani. Ngingutipo Shabalala, a Swazi, based in Swaziland, almost actually for my entire being. I'm not sure from a context point of view in terms of this conversation. I was a student at UNISWA. I was a student at early 2000s. Probably in terms of my contribution to this conversation, it will try and provide an understanding, or my understanding, of the context of my being at UNISWA, in as far as it relates to activities of students in the context of the discussion.
Yeah. Okay. No, thank you. I'll start with you, Tipo. We were speaking in our last discussion, we had Lenus Mavimbela and we had Mr. Silwayiphi Sithole, two people who gave us an idea of what were the student issues of the decade in the period between 1990 and 1999. And especially the two important things in that decade was the hunger strike in mid-90s and the Black Wednesday. And we were lucky because both of them were involved in some small measure or even in some capacity in both these events. But we get into, so we seamlessly now go into the new millennium. And when I think back about what are the issues that defined the millennium, if I may call it like that, and I cannot help but think of the 2002 evictions at Wamkweli and Matucheni. And I know that for the first time, students did play a role or a response to an issue that was outside of their immediate. So I would like to know, what is it that students did in response to this? Because it was shaking the country's political sphere. And how were students responding to those events at Maqacheni?
I think what I can say is that that development happened within a context of life, both in the country and how it then impacts students, if I may put it that way. My observation of those developments actually date, okay, in particular how the students then respond, probably happen within a context of an environment where issues that students were participating in when on or responding to were what you would call
Sorry, Tipo, can you unmute? I wasn't hearing you anymore.
okay.
Yes, can you come again?
And ngiyavakala nyana.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So I was saying in the earlier periods before Maqacheni, my issues of students or my issues that students were responding to were mainly bread and butter issues of students, issues of allowances, delays in allowances, state of living conditions. Nakhona, it was more around Emandi, Asheshe Abanze and those things. Some of the dormitories were probably not very well maintained. Students were responding mostly to those issues at that point and leading to those Maqachenis. And I must state that I've been following the two webinars that you have been organizing. One of the differences that I note in that period leading to the early 2000s and the earlier periods, if you'd recall, one of the gists or that is highlighted of Black Wednesday was around quality of food. But what quality of food and those actions by students eventually led to a state where Emma students were Emma allowances to be paid directly to students. Emma allowances were paid directly to students, and students decided what to do and how to utilize their allowances, which then brought about, in my understanding, it then brought about a different kind of unity. It actually removed a solid unit of students, because students prior to our being there were together in a lot of instances and spaces. They were together in classes, they were together at mealtime, they were together at TV time at the Union Hall. But at that time in Esenkona University, that was beginning to move away a little bit. In the earlier years, we did a lot of being engaged a Union Hall, because that was the space where we would watch television. Probably most of the students would be. But in my later years, we had televisions at Indlini and computers and that. It then meant what had defined students' activism in the previous years, in the prior years, the early 90s, was not the case. But the issue as Maqacheni, as you're raising it actually really impacted students, and to a point that students responded in a way that was in solidarity with the people of Maqecheni nakhona, mainly coming through from a point of solidarity with students that were directly impacted by those evictions. Those are my observations.
So what do you sense then? So it means in essence that we can assume, maybe I want to boil it down to this point, that your point of entry to the Maqecheni was motivated by students themselves who had been part or parcel of the Maqecheni issue. Yesterday when we were speaking, you said something interesting about how students had to be convinced by a student who was in fact directly affected at Maqecheni. Only then were students kind of agitated to want to contribute, or rather to offer solidarity. And take us back on that. How did I mean, I know because I remember that in that time it was Sive who was leading the SRC. So how did he manage to put students who all these years had been really boiled down to issues affecting them at campus, at university level? How are you able to have this seismic shift now to have an interest on socio-economic or even political issues outside of students?
I think, and I would say the interest was there. I can put an see happening. You'll find this is incorrect or this is wrong, and 20 probably agree with it. Of the 80, you'll find that 40 say something has to be done, but not all 40 are brave enough at that point in time until there is 5 that say, something has to happen and be done. But if I recall the developments, particularly in a students' body meeting around when they get those evictions, because it wasn't just a matter of when they my evictions today, tomorrow students are responding. But there had been also issues that were there within campus, and this one was one of the issues that were discussed in a student body meeting agenda. The issue is some of our colleagues and students really did not see where and how as students we should play any role. They were actually saying it is painful what is happening, but really what can we do, and why should we be involved? But I do recall one lady, I don't know her name, one lady who actually addressed the students' meeting then on the day, actually speaking about her experiences. She had been home the previous day. I think it was a Sunday night when the meeting was held, and said she had been home that weekend, and what she had experienced is painful, and she was really in tears. And the mood of the gathering changed in such a way that everyone was understood that
Sorry, I'm okay. Yeah, now we're
this
back.
is an issue that affecting a fellow student. Here is an issue that is impacting a fellow student and a colleague that is supposed to be concentrated in class, pursuing studies and engaging on activities that will shape her future. But her focus is now on an issue that is outside her ability of it being her family of a chief that is being removed. and it then impacts on her directly. There she is, she has to concentrate in class, but there are matters that are out there.
Sorry, people, I keep on getting some challenges with your audio. But can you come again? I want to check if I'm still hearing you properly.
In her community that impacts, then and us also impact us directly.
Yeah. Okay. Just just a small brief on this one. You say that one thing you kept noting was in the previous discussion was that the issues at the university had always, whether it's student, whether it's about bed, whether it's about refectory, whether it's about this and that, had been happening and had been a recurring feature of student politics in the 90s and into the 2000s. How did, for example, and you spoke about how it was beginning, the student concentration in the university was beginning to change and moving away from students in campus interacting together all the time to now seemingly moving out of the university, and therefore the ability to mobilize starting to be difficult. And now I want to check how easy it was you as activists of the time to deal with the challenges of a disintegrating studentry, others seemingly moving increasingly out of university, other into the university residencies, others being paid more to stay out of the university. How challenging was it then to organize students? Because they are no longer together all the time. You now have to literally devise ways through which you can mobilize and engage them.
It was a time of transition. It was a time where there is a common saying that says change is the only constant, and I believe that changes had been happening. But how changes were being experienced at that time was that they were happening. Every year was different from the previous year. At first year, almost the entire studentry or quite a majority, whilst we still were able to there were very few students that were using the refectory for meals. In my earlier years, students were congregating at the Union Hall for television.
Sorry, Tipo, I'm missing.
But in subsequent years, that accommodation. Sorry, Mangaba.
I was saying that I'm struggling with your connection there. But can you come again? Because I was struggling with your connection.
Yeah, I am a victim of a place of residence. So those changes were happening, Mangoba. It was a struggle to get accommodation inside UNISWA in my first 2 years at university, but third year going forward, it was not as difficult. A lot of students were opting to move out of campus because
people were really struggling with you now. But while I will come back. Maybe while you are still sorting I will come back to you. Please.
Many factors, but one of early 2000s there was a % of.
Sorry, people are missing an important and crucial part about the things that you're saying. So I will just kindly want to go to something else. Then I will come back while we are trying to sort out your connection. I just want to introduce and be sure that I'm able to get both of my panelists now fully well with the network problem or connection, so that I can be sure that it's not a rich people suburban issue like I'm starting to believe. So Moses and Mangoba, can I check that you are able to get me properly and I'm also able to get you properly? I saw that Moses is now here. If Mangoba can speak, and then I will also check with Moses later.
Good evening, and thank you so much for having us. I'm sure you're going to guide with questions. I'm not sure what I must say at this point in time.
Yeah, no, don't worry. I just wanted to be sure that the problem of network that I'm experiencing with Tipo is only with Tipo. It's not with all of you. Yeah, no, it's fine. We can hear you properly. Yes, we can hear you properly. But I don't. Which phone is Moses? Because I saw that he was just using a Galaxy, and now I am not even sure which is it because I've got too many of them here. But if
Moses, I think he's using Galaxy A20.
A20, okay. So can you unmute and so you can be sure that we're hearing you properly. Moses, can you kindly unmute?
I think I've muted you.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. No, thanks. At least also you're wearing properly. I would have been very disappointed. It was something black and white. So
yeah.
I'm going to be given more time because of the way you are dressed. So it's fine. Let me go back to Tipo because I don't want to miss him. He was making a very important point about before we got cut. He's saying that it was becoming difficult to organize students given that there was now a transition at the university, because it's easy to mobilize when everyone is living together in campus, in residencies, sport hall, whatever as it may be. And then there's now, he comes at the university when there's a transition. So I want to find out how that transition affected them as student activists at the time in ability to organize, especially in the early decade. So people, let's come back and so that you finish your thoughts there.
Sure, can you hear me?
Yeah, properly now. Okay.
Some fire my headphones, my earphones.
Okay.
So I was saying, as time progressed, whilst I was experiencing UNISWA, it was becoming easier to get accommodation in campus, purely because of choice. Quite a number of our colleagues were opting to move out of campus to watch and those migrations were a huge influence to what is now referred to as Block Z. Those informal accommodation units that are outside UNIS. The reason why people were opting out of UNISWA, one, UNISWA had begun to apply a little bit more aggressively certain restrictions, which was more a stick. And then also there was a carrot in terms of the off-camp allowance increases. I note in the early 2000s, it increased by more than 100%. I think at some point it jumped from a 2,400 per annum to about
yeah, Tipo,
5,500. A carrot which attracted quite a number of students.
Yeah, no, continue. I think it says you have a low bandwidth on my now, but I don't want to disturb. This is a very important point. Continue. When we struggle, we will come back, even if it's later. But continue. Hello,
All right.
Tipo.
And in terms of the hi Mangoba.
Yeah, sure. Continue.
Yes, in terms of those restrictions, restrictions that were experienced by students at that time. For example, a little bit more aggression in terms of capping some things that we were doing illegal. It was illegal to provide your own meals or to cook your own meals. And whilst that was known earlier, the aggression in terms of clamping down on that was not as heightened as it was later on. There were restrictions in terms of equipments that we could bring in, fridges, etc. But what happened is quite a lot of students opted to move off camp, and now engaging and organizing students and rallying students around issues or issues that impact them required a little bit more of tact. So what those changes forced some tact to be applied, but also there were changes that were being driven by the university admin, impacting on the SRC constitution. Whereas for most of my time, meetings were held at night. Usually it was Wednesday and Thursday, and then Sunday. The admin at some point forced for meetings to be held during the day and or on weekends. That actually led to a big issue, particularly in the 2002-2003 academic year. Yeah.
Okay, so people, can you pause there? We'll come back to what are the threads that seem to be visible in all these years. But I was just curious about how that affected your ability to organize and mobilize students. Now the next important thing that happened in this decade, I think, is the semesterization. And I have seen so many people here who are ready to correct us if we ever say anything wrong. In fact, I was acknowledging earlier the first respondent and the longest serving SRC member in recent time, Percy, and many others who were at the university, especially during the time of semesterization, and how it started, what influenced it, and what were the responses of the students. So, and towards this end, then I would like to bring in Moses, Mr. Masilela, and Mr. Mabuza in this case. Now, I recall that at the time of the semesterization, it had been a simmering issue. Everyone was talking about it. There was an issue about semesterization in corners, formally, informally, people were talking about it. But there hadn't been something that had been able to mobilize and drive this anger. Take us back. What sparked this semesterization issue? What happened? How did everything start? How did it got so organized that it became, and I can argue, one of the most, it's the longest running battle between the state university and student. In fact, to a small or large extent, even far significant than some of the periods we have spoken about in the past. Umshangu uyangiva yini?
Ngiyakuva Nguni. Ngiyavakala Musa.
Yes.
Yeah, so i-semesterization uqala kwayo, mhlawumbe let me just explain ukuthi some of us came at the university at a time when you will recall yourself, you were there, Moses was there, and and they have also acknowledged the longest serving SRC member here at UNISWA, Mr. Langamandla. I can see it here. So came at a time when the morale was down in terms of galvanizing students to stand up on their issues, especially that academic year. I think around 2006, 2007, the spirit was low, and you will know that the students, once they get allowance, that it's over. But at the time, it wasn't just about allowance or any other material issue. It was an academic issue that has to do with a program, semesterization. So you will know that semesterization in the world over, like most semesters are no, it's semester 1, semester 2. In fact, you are just given courses. For you to finish this degree, you must have 30 courses. So university, what they did at the time, there was this issue. They wanted to break the fund, for instance, instead of doing 30, you will do 60. And the fees would increase, and there were a number of issues. For instance, in the law department, I think they were the most affected. So there was already a mass talks, and you could feel that tensions. It's a cold war between the university and the students. So, but none could do anything about that. It was coming. We could see it coming. That this thing was coming. It was affecting my students. It was going to affect even the funders, the funder itself. It was going to affect all of us. So now there was a clandestine meeting. Hey, today we must reveal my secret. There was a clandestine meeting at that time. You will recall that 2006, there was a discussion around reviving the Swaziland National Union of Students at Gashile. What led to what is now known as the Gashile Declaration, when students resolved to revive the student unions, NAS. So at the time, I wasn't in the SRC, but when I got into a position where I am now sensitized and I am now oriented around the issue that the students were complaining about. So with Norman, actually last year, 2006, we were just discussing about the unity of students and da. So there was a clandestine meeting. You were there yourself. There was a Masleda here was there. And I won't mention the others who are not here. At least those that are here can just raise their hands and say, no, I wasn't there. So I don't talk about people who are not here. There was a clandestine meeting that was held at I think it was around Damaklasabo A1 something, where we discussed about there's something happening. What do we do about it? And for me, I think that meeting led to a number of resolutions. Last year, informed how we were going to deal with the issue of semesterization, how we were going to deal with student politics moving forward. Number one, we resolve on semesterization. Semesterization, university missing that academic year for starters. The second one was some of us must go to the SRC. That was the meeting that informed me to go to the SRC. It was resolved that I must go and contest elections. But at that time, if you are at the second year level, it was hard for you to take serious positions. And that meeting also, something interesting that came out of it was the power of president at the time. So there was more power being a chairperson of the Waluseni campus, which is a position that I eventually held. Because if you are president, you are working within a budget, transport, there are many issues that you have to deal with logistically and otherwise. So, it 3,000 plus numbers. So, 70, that was number one. Number two, ubaletha kwakho la akusho kusile issue itawuba address kanti lapho uvolgalvanize labakhona and ngibo leba-affectako le issue la semesterization. So the decision was take SRC chairpersonship for Waluseni campus, let's lead the students. And then that's how everything started, because we had to now prepare for an election in the SRC.
Yeah,
and,
I want to
some of my colleagues had to convince others.
Sorry, Msheng. I don't want it to be. I want to bring in Moses exactly at this point. You will come back. Moses, you remember this meeting that Mangoba is talking about, and I mean that was way before the semesterization and the resolution. What were the? I mean, I know that he says there are resolutions, and he's just spoken to two of them. Can you say that was the point that sparked, or that was the nucleus that eventually did all of the things that happened at the university. And I recall that one of the things that you had to deal with was the issue of the law department, the law students and stuff like that. Take us back a little bit on that issue of that meeting and what subsequently you as an individual, you were tasked to do and what you were able to do.
Bonge mnguni. Ngiyavakala.
Yeah.
Just to go back a little bit. The issue semesterization gets the figures from my lecturers. I think there were two of them. One of them was Swazi and the other one was a foreigner. They were actually trying to explain to us that there is just something which is coming the next academic year, and we have never heard about it. And this animal was called the semesterization. The previous year, if I recall very well, the chairperson of the Western Embassy didn't come from the law department. And we had our own meeting as law students because this semesterization thing, the way it was explained to us, seemingly the law students were the ones who were going to be more affected than the rest, because we recall that Luyengo, Mbabane, they were already, the system was already introduced to them. We decided that as law students, that the chairperson now for this issue to be addressed in a proper manner, we need to have the chairperson to come from our side. Come rain or sunshine, that had to happen. And then I remember we were around the student union hall. I can't recall very well whether it was yourself or some other guy who approached us. It was Ngubeni, Pius, and myself. And this chap, he called us to the side and requested to have a word with us concerning what the SRC should look like the next academic year. We went to sit down and the name of Mangoba came up. We had nothing, we didn't want to listen to that thing because we didn't know Mangoba. We thought it was somebody who was here, it's coming, he's on the side of the enemy. They want to take this chap and be the chairperson and then angasai address the issue going forward as my law student. Because for us, lokuthi singa understand the issue of semesterization kancane nje ukuthi bakhuluma ukuthi ngoba basichazela abanye ama-department basilokufundisa nge-first semester uyakubhala ngaDecember and then nge-second semester uqala lokunye uyokubhala ngaMay. Kanti ngithi bathi sitawuhlephula incwadi ekhadi lokufunze ngale kuqaleni ukubhala ngaDecember kumendeka uphinde ukubhale ngaMay sathina chose lakithi ke ukusilungela. Okay, sahlangana ke that brief meeting lesabanayo ngathi besiboma 4 yalida ukuthi kube nanawo umhlangano la khuluma ngawo Mabuza. La kwafika khona ke we were convinced by those guys who were there that Mangoba Mabuza should be the one and truster ngalo msebenzi ukuthi asilungiswe le. But the emphasis was that he won't be alone. We need to be there and support him because umasimshiya yedwa angeke aze si-achieve and this we achieve. We resolved, that was the first resolution, that we should support Mangoba and make sure that he's the chairperson of the Western campus.
Yeah.
And obviously, we had to have a matbot nabosis labaqinile lastauba campaignela ukuthi banominate and bangena ku-SRC lokufaka ekhasini Mr Ndlangamandla lo kwathiwa vele masekusetshenzwa kwabonakala ukuthi madoda la ngalaqinile asala ngisho labanye sebabaluleka but at that time boma Silela nalamanye emadoda nabosisi asingenanga kwe-SRC saba ku background sisupporta laba ngekhathi kwe-SRC ngicabanga ukuthi at this stage ngathanda ukuthi ngiyibisele back kumabuza aqhubeke.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, okay, that's fine. I just wanted to take about the issue of how the law students, because I cut him Mangoba, he was also making an important point. How was it and how easy was it for him to deal? Because he spoke about this meeting. Now, Mshang, please continue from there. Now, from the premise that Moses has clarified the small issue, because I remember that in that meeting at the library lab, where it was resolved that how we're going to deal with the student issues, there was this small issue about how was the law department, which had known to be very dominant in the SRC, and the fact that you were not known, I mean, in the true sense of the word, you were just a second-year student, and you were coming from a department that is not known to have many people in the SRC. So I think Moses has kind of given that very nice angle to how that was going to be balanced up with all those clandestine meetings that we had. But I think you can take it from there around how then did we move forward with that?
Yeah, no, I think Moses has just covered it nicely, and he also added a part that I had missed, that the law part, especially because the other agreement, I think, is making a very important point. The other agreement was that we could not all get into the SRC for obvious reasons. You know, some people must be able to give support from outside of the SRC. So then we had to get into the SRC. The election was coming, and obviously, if you have got the law department on your side, and you are you're an unknown second-year student doing journalism and mass communication, so people will look at you with suspicion with regards to raising their issues sharply with the administration. So there were a lot of talks. I remember Jangatavana DSA, the Dean of Student Affairs, Akuluma, and he didn't know me at the time, during the election day. Would say, look at Fungatsuluna, is legally known, you know, and he was right. And he said, no, that's the death of student politics. That's what he said. He said, that's the death of student politics. Because, I mean, he was right. It was a good analysis at the time for me. It was not abstract. It was based on the fact that the people who had always done things were those from the law department and other departments, not my department. And then we won the election. But I could feel, even during the time of elections, you could feel at campus level that students were serious about this issue. It was an emotive issue. They were very serious about it. They were not just talking about it for the sake of it. So I could pick that during our consultations, during the campaign period. And when immediately we won the election, we had to take it up. So our first meeting, I remember, in the MPH hall, when we talked about it, it was mostly those people from law department. And I think the numbers, 100, 150 people. The spirit was down. You could feel that, no, the spirit is down. So we took it from there. That was the beginning of everything. Because now we have taken the resolutions of that meeting were being achieved. We had taken the SRC chairmanship position. We were with people like now Langamandla here, who were also seen as people that were going to support it inside the SRC. We had people like Bomaslela outside of the SRC, who was going to give support. And then now the big work begins, convincing students now to rally behind this issue. And the semesterization was not one of those issues. Lafani allowance, within the Mbabane, deliver petition, boycott my class, then you go back to class. it was going to be protracted. You could feel it. No, this thing is not easy. The university was adamant, introducing the system, it also went immediately. And that, yeah, I think that was the beginning of it, Ngumalo. I don't know whether you want us to go into.
I want to now redirect you. Okay, now you win the SRC elections, and then immediately this becomes a hot potato on your table. Give us a sense, one, and I'd like you to be much more direct in some of these questions, because I think Sese Nabe well enough, you know, on the issues on the ages, but I would like you to be much more direct. One, around how did this matter eventually escalate to the level of the courts? Because there's the university administration, and it should have been the first point of call to be able to resolve these matters. How easy was it to engage at that level with the administration, even Senate, and resolve it amicably? Two, how easy and difficult was it to mobilize other campuses, and what support or what did you manage to get to galvanize now the entire student body, not just at what you said?
Yeah, was the courts. We went to the courts because we felt that the university was breaching its own regulations with regards to, you can't specifically introducing a program, a new program, in the midst of, you are coming in first year in a system, let's say, and then in the midst of your degree, you are being told the programs that interfere with. So we felt no, and there was it was clear, it was written in the university regulations, which that cannot happen, especially without the consulting the other party, in this case the students. So the university was in breach of its own regulation. So that's why we felt no, but we can go to court, but say push on the ground, because what if the courts delay, you know, the courts will take its time, and also what if you lose it? Because it was a three-pronged strategy. We felt we were taking it to the court, we are on the ground, we are big Shasma students, and number three, the battle of ideas, which is why we had to, through you, have the space at the time Sunday, so that we explain to parents and the world to know we are not just against the system, the semesterization, but it had issues here and there. So that was it. That's why we went to court. But when we went to court, first instance, it was dismissed by Judge Mbutoma, by Begma Palal, who said exactly what you just said, Ngumalo. He was not convinced that the university we had exhausted all the remedies inside campus at the university. So we had to take the issue back to University Senate and go all the way to council. And the reason we went to court was because while we were demonstrating, the university was already introducing, there was no signs that the university was going to hit to what we were saying. So that's why we went to the court. And then we were back at campus again demonstrating.
Yeah. Okay. Moses, give me the tactics now around how to sustain the anger or the momentum in all these campuses. How did you manage to keep the momentum heightened up within the students at large, and maybe Waluseni in particular? How were the tactics? How did you manage to put this matter sustained on the show, on the lips of everyone?
Thank you, Mango. It wasn't an easy task. Simply for the sole reason, because besides that semesterization was coming for the first time at UNISWA, I mean at Waluseni, to the law department. There were other departments at Waluseni who were already semesterizing. For instance, science. If I recall well, I'm not sure about humanities. So to try and mobilize the whole campus, even before moving out to the other campuses, it was a very difficult task, because it was seen as a low thing. Most of the students were saying they are fine with semesterization because the programs are about vele, my courses about makul, so it works for them. But we had to drive the idea that this issue is not about law. Is about a university, the administration of UNISWA, imposing things on students. Today is the law department that is affected by this semesterization issue. And if we leave this thing hanging and allow them to continue and do things as they please, we don't know what will happen tomorrow. That will affect the whole university. So as a result, we had to students let us not look at this thing as into a department A1, but sibuke njengento lefakwa a university yonke without having consulted the relevant stakeholders. And Mangoba, the issue that the university didn't want to stomach in was the issue that the students were actually the main stakeholders to the university. Because when we talked about stakeholders being consulted, they never thought about us as university students. But yeah, it wasn't an easy issue because I recall the issue had to be taken over by the president, the executive now of UNESCO, where Mr. Makawel Damin was the president of the time. He was our fourth-year law student at the time. It had to escalate to that level so that we try and mobilize and bring all the campuses together and try and fight the administration on imposing these things. This thing which they had not consulted the relevant stakeholders about it.
Yeah, Masile, I just want to sorry to cut you there. Can you take me through the legal processes that you went through? Because I recall that as Mangoba has already estimated, this issue started at one level of the courts. It eventually went up to the highest courts, if I'm mistaken. Do you recall what were the stages? What did you win here? What did you lose here? And what was the eventual legal process that finalized it, at least legally?
Yeah, we actually didn't win anything from the start, but at the end we did. As Mabuza mentioned, when we wanted to attack this issue, we divided it into two. We said we'll fight it from two different fronts. The first one being the legal route. Then the second one, which we termed it as the political route. The political route obviously involved us having to partake in memberships within the institution. Unfortunately, the university was busy. Consultations was busy setting dates for my exam. Although I wasn't in the party of legal issues, the political part, the front.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me bring you in. I will
summarize the political, the code.
Yeah. No, I will ambush the first respondent on this one later on and ask him to, if he recalls, because he was the first respondent. And so So I will park it here until I bring back the first respondent. Michelle, I have direct questions I would like you to direct to Nang directly. One, the university was closed for a long time, had to be closed. There was a militarization of the institution. I recall there were stationed also officers for a long time. And it led to the tensions and subsequently the banning of the university. What at the political level now that even Masile is talking about, and by political level, I mean the agitation on the students of the country, what lengths did students go to have this issue addressed in their favor?
Yeah, so I can summarize it in 60 seconds. We demonstrate the university does its own thing. The university is forced to close down for the first time. We come back, we demonstrate, we go to the issues taken to court before Judge Begma Palala. Begma Palala says, go back to university, exhaust all remedies. We demonstrate, we take it to University Senate and Council, we lose it at those levels. But the students are continuing to demonstrate. We lose it, then we go to court now, before Judge Mbuthumamba for the second time. That was around December. The university is preparing for the exam to be in December. When we get to Judge Mbuthumamba, that's where we lose the case. We lose the case, we come back, the university is bent down. The part of the administration block is bent down that evening. Students are demonstrating. The following day, the university is closing. All of us go home in December. Then we come back after closing. We used to conduct meetings, for instance, outside the campus, at the Bosco Skill Center in Manzini in our numbers, because now the university was closed. When we come back in January, the university still wants to continue with the exam. Then we take it to court and say, no, you can't continue with the exam because Judge Mbuthumamba dismissed our dismissed that exam. It is taken out to Judge Tinsile Mabuza, who gives us the order and says to university, stop implementing this thing pending the case in the Court of Appeal. We go back, we demonstrate again. The university was closed even in January. Students were injured. It was because of already there was police brutality, heavy police presence on campus. Also inside campus armed for the whole time, for 24 hours. Shift. And then that's where it ended up in the Court of Appeal, because I think Court of Appeal may say winner. University, if you see winner Court of Appeal, stop exam at December, May. So those are the stages in terms of the one. But again, I know Bulangamanda will get into the nitty-gritties and the technicalities. But so yeah, much judge lang 3. I call go Begma Palala. I Qinsile, I'm Mbuthumamba, I Qinsile, in the Court of Appeal. So my students, I think I've never seen such energy. It was because at the political level also there was a lot of support, even from civil society, political parties, trade union. The support was unparalleled. Some of us were already having clandestine meetings where we were advised by the movement at the political level, because you know that students will always be students. I mean, when you're on campus, we're excited. You never even study how this thing is escalating, the seriousness. For instance, some could not understand that now, which was no longer about university. We're fighting the state. The might of the state was against us. The brutality, the arresting, the detention. We went to police interrogation, some of us. It was now the state versus us. So we had to explain to students, but because we had the political, we were politically connected and politically involved, even outside of student politics.
But
So
I think talking of arrest,
to interpret the situation correctly politically and to.
Sorry, Mshengu, I want you to zoom back a little bit here. You're talking of arrest. What were I remember the two of us, accompanied by Leo, that police officers took you to Scotland. I recall this because I was involved. In fact, I went with you to Scotland. You know, they were interrogating. I remember, if my memory serves me well, Gubeni also was. So there were a lot of casualties at the level of students now interacting with the police and eventually arrested or harassed in some form or the other. So I would like to know To what lengths was now the state involved? And to what lengths were they taking the side of the university, or at least brutalizing or trying to fight back the students? And I want you to take a cue from what we spoke about. For example, that you said to me yesterday that you were banned from speaking in the press, even though you had access at the time in the early times of the issue. Take us through that a bit.
Yeah, the state brutality was there. We could feel it. You know, some students were detained, some students were beaten up by police. Myself and Makawa, who was the president or the chairperson, who went to Kotveni, where we were seriously interrogated, especially after the banning of the university in December 2007. So, hey, we spent answers, but we were able to explain it from the student perspective. So we're accompanied by Leo Gama, the late, may his soul rest in peace. He's one of the most noble of lawyers that I've seen in this country. But also, maybe I always pay tribute to Mumhlahla, who was our lawyer, who took up the case all the way to the Court of Appeal without a cent. We didn't pay anything. And I've never seen such a lawyers in my lifetime. A tribute to them. And then I wanted to say the state brutality, it was on those levels. Detention, harassing students, beating up students. Some of us were receiving threats. I think even Moses, I'm not sure, but some of us, myself, Makawe, those who were in the forefront were receiving threats from the unknown numbers and also the state. I used to speak, for instance, on the radio in the morning show, the Tishisawa. I was banned from speaking there. I used to speak at Swazi TV, Gusile breakfast show, if not mistaken. I was told by sources inside Swazi TV, I've been banned. They were no longer inviting me. And this issue, so the state was all over in terms of beating students, stopping us from all platforms, and yeah, it's a different level. The police brutality on campus, I had never seen, even now, you know, between then and now, I've never seen such a situation where police are on campus 24 hours, armed, with the matenda, begiwe lapha, bahleti, bakati bam, niyafunza, niyahamba. It was normal, a sort of normal at the time.
Yeah, Mshangu, just on that, before I go to Moses, people, what they do not know, maybe it's time that we are recalling, was that there was a huge move. I recall when you came to my place, because at some time you were used to stay at my place. I remember when, after the banning of the university,